And land use planning being the major tool we have in order to do that. Now, land use planning at the European level is not what we want to achieve, but we want to achieve a European-wide policy coherence that makes sure that what we do is being done in an integrated way on the individual areas. To give you one example, we have the objective for 20% renewable energy by 2020, I think. Now, this is all good. It's good because it helps us mitigating climate change. The problem is that it's being the ways that the member states develop those renewable energy action plan is done in isolation from the objectives that they have undertaken to Natura 2000, for example. So we end up with a situation where in Bulgaria, most of the areas they had thought to build wind parks or to have solar panels being installed or to have hydrological power stations are those Natura 2000 areas that they have been designated. A third of the country is Natura 2000. And that's, of course, will end up with problems on the ground. And that's happening right now. And this all could have been avoided if from the outset you would have had a national land use plan where all these policies have been integrated in a logical manner. And this is what we want to promote and make sure will happen in the next financial period for the EU. I already mentioned management. We have now to go into the phase of designation to the phase of management. One point I have not yet mentioned is that, of course, while the designation process was a mainly scientific process, to where are the areas that are best suited for the species and habitats, so you make sure that you have enough of them in the network, this phase of management is very much a credible importance is the participation in there. These management plans have to be developed with the landowners, with the hunters, with the users, with the farmers, with the foresters, with those that have our economic interest, because otherwise their implementation will not be successful. And I think that it's also under-recognized in the wider policy making that how Natura 2000 and what is happening in those sites has actually been a real model for participatory management of our landscape, because a lot of what's happening there has really brought people together that from the outset didn't like each other at all, like bird watchers and hunters, for example. And we have really a lot of examples where, thanks to the development of those management plans, they worked together and agreed on what needs to be done and realized that actually they have the same objectives. Of course, all of this will not happen without money. And we all know that we are now in times where budgets need to be cut, where public spending has to be cut, etc. And we are being told, because we are preparing a new communication on financing Natura 2000, you won't get any more public funding. You have to rely on new innovative funding mechanisms like payment for ecosystem services, like habitat banking, etc. So we looked into that a bit more and we realized, yes, all of these are important. All of these need to be further developed. But at the state that we are at the moment, without public funding, it will not happen. And this is something that really we have to sell to our policymakers. Yes, we have to cut public spending, but if you cut it on the most important areas that we have in order to provide this green infrastructure, you're undermining your own future economic development and well-being. So this is not the best place to cut public spending. This is not what the Commission says, but what I say as head of the Natura 2000 unit. We have estimated that we need about 6 billion euros per year to well manage the network. I don't think it's a lot, because actually it's quite a small amount of money if you think that this will ensure real sustainable management of nearly 20% of our land area. We looked into the existing process that we have, which is mainly focusing on integrating into other policy areas. And we have realized that there are a number of issues that are working well, but there are also a number of reasons why this integration approach has not been as successful as it could have been, and we will address those, administrative burden being one of them, the fact that the member states had a complete choice of using this pot of money or not, and of course if you are an agriculture department in some countries, nature is not their prime responsibility, that they rather use the money to increase the standard of some milk producing factories, etc. I mean, they had the choice to use different pots of money in different ways, so we want to make sure also that, and one of the tools that we are thinking of is to have a real demand or a plan from the member states on what kind of funding they would need for the next financial period that will start in 2013 and end in 2020. What kind of, for what areas, what beneficiaries, what funding instruments that would require from us, then we would be much in a better position to go to the agriculture, to the rural development, to the structural and to the fisheries funds of the EU, which are huge, and they will be huge also in the next financial perspective, and say, okay, your own member state, you have said that you need so much for Natura 2000, so please use this money now for that. And I think that will help, that would help earmarking the money for where it is needed. And that's what is here called the programmatic approach. We have a very important fund, which is called LIFE, which is extremely small compared to all the other European funding instruments, but has demonstrated a real important value, particularly for nature conservation. I think a lot of you sitting here have benefited one time or the other from a LIFE project here in the area. There has been a lot of LIFE projects, and we are now working on renewing this LIFE regulation. Our objective is to strengthen it, to enhance it, to also maybe have some more multi-annual facilities that is less project by project based, but allows to give a higher amount of money for a certain amount of time, which would reduce the administrative burden. I can't tell you more now because all of this is in discussion, and what DG Environment wants is one thing, what then the Commission as a whole will want is another thing, and of course what then the Member States and the Council and the Parliament will agree is again another thing. So I'm afraid we'll have to wait until 2012 probably before we know what will be the future of the LIFE instrument. But our DG Environment objectives for the moment is to on one hand strengthen LIFE, but also strengthen integration of nature conservation funding possibilities in the other financing instruments. And as I said, the fisheries policy and the fisheries fund, the common agricultural policy, the structural and cohesion policy, which altogether are probably 80% of the EU budget, they are all being reviewed at the moment as we speak. So this is now that we have to make sure that those policies will be reviewed in the way that supports us rather than undermines our work. What is also very important is that we have to talk to some specific sectors where we see that there are particular problems. I already mentioned wind energy. There is also the mining industry that had very nasty communication several years ago saying Natura 2000 will make us being redundant because we won't have any land where we extract our minerals anymore, and this will have huge impacts on our economies and jobs, etc. So it's important to work with them, and we had created those working groups where together with them we sit on a table and we agree on, yes, you can have economic development in Natura 2000 sites, but you have to do it right and respect certain principles, and here are some best practices. And again, what came out of that, looking at all the best practice examples that we have around Europe, is the need for integrated planning. From the outset, when you plan a project, put everybody on one table, have an integrated approach, and then you will see that there is actually much more win-win possibilities than you thought at the beginning. So we have just published the guidance on the non-energy mineral extractive industry. It's available on our website. The wind energy guidance document that is long awaited for will be ready in 1 or 2 weeks' time. We are just really doing the latest touches. And the one on ports and estuaries is also finalized, but we will publish it together with a communication on biodiversity in ports in November probably. There are some other guidance documents where the documents themselves is one thing. The process of developing them with the sector is probably the even more important thing. On wilderness, that was mentioned, wilderness is not something that is opposite or not able to have within Natura 2000 sites. It's a compatible concept. We want to clarify that. agriculture, inland waterways, aquaculture. We have to manage the successes we had, like wolves are coming back to areas where they have never been. This creates conflicts. Cormorants are in some areas very abundant. That creates conflicts with fisheries. And so we create specific working groups where this can be discussed. And if they all, the NGOs, the fishermen, the member states can agree on some concepts on how to handle this problem, this will make it easier to then deal with it. And we are also developing some guidance document on climate change in Natura 2000, because climate change will have an effect on the site, so we need to factor that into our management. And again, we want on the other side, the two coins of the same side, to look into how through management and how we can better demonstrate that through management we contribute to climate change mitigation and adaptation. There are a lot of other activities, I just don't have the time to even mention them here today, that is targeting specific sectors, forestry, etc., that we are planning to do. Now, all of this is nice, but you mentioned the Eurobarometer numbers on biodiversity. The Eurobarometer numbers on Natura 2000 are even worse. I think only 18% of the people in the EU have heard about Natura 2000, although it is really an incredible success story of European integration in a way that you agree on some common principles, you implement them, and you actually can demonstrate of what you have done. So we think that this needs to change, and we count a lot of you also to help us changing that. We at the moment have a big biodiversity campaign running that is more focusing on the wider biodiversity issues. We want to have this followed up in the next years with a specific campaign on Natura 2000. One, I think, very important tool we have launched at this year's Green Week in Brussels is the Natura 2000 Public Viewer. Because a lot of those, even those that are planning a project, they always ask us, where do I know if it is a Natura 2000 site and what is in this site, etc. Now it is possible. You go to the website natura2000.eea.europa.eu and you have a Google map, basically, of the world. Now you can either zoom in as with Google, or you type in there Pescaceroli, as I did and I make yesterday, and I put some screenshots so you see how it looks like. When you do that and you press enter, you come to this map where you have here Pescaceroli, and you see that we are surrounded by huge Natura 2000 sites, and you have actually three colors. One meaning that it's a site protected under the Birds Directive, an SPA. The other means that it's a site protected under the Habitats Directive, an SCI. And the third color, which the blue, means it's both of them. So it's overlapping sites, because a lot of those are actually both Birds Directive and Habitats Directive sites at the same time. And then you can go further and click on the eye, and you have then the standard data form, which explains to you which species are in there, for which it has been promoted, the area of the site, etc., etc. So please use it, and also I think we count on you to tell your constituency that this is there and they can know where Natura 2000 is. This is my last slide. It's all of us looking into the future, full of hope, and it's absolutely clear to me that achieving the 2010 target of not only halting the loss but also restoring and factoring our global responsibility will be a major challenge. I believe very much that European parks have a central role in achieving this challenge. I mean, not only you are the central knots of our Natura 2000 network, which is itself a major tool to achieve the 2020 target, but also with your 100 years of experience of making things happen on the ground, having these participatory approaches, working with the sectors that are impacting on what's happening, trying to find solutions, you can really help us implementing these new strategies and these new policies that we need in order to make it happen here. So for us and the EU to succeed, it will really be of major importance, as I said, to have this connection between what is being decided in Brussels and it's in Nagoya and whatever, and what is happening on the ground. And you play a central role in that part. And of course, this will not happen without support from society to what you do, also financial support in order for this to happen. And I hope that through the EU funding instruments and through the EU policies, we can enhance this support in the coming financial period. This is what we are working for. And let's see if we are going to succeed. But I'm actually quite helpful because, as I said, this International Year of Biodiversity really has helped us in enhancing the understanding in those responsible for finance, economy, and other things of the values of nature and the ecosystem service it provides. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Stefan.